we're kicking off with Randy Orton, who made his Raw return this week to the biggest ovation he's had in years on the red brand, as the Viper received a hero's ovation in Nashville. Orton wasted no time in making his intentions clear. He wants to get back at the bloodline, but it was Rhea Ripley who made an appearance in an interaction many fans were excited for. Ripley said that the bloodline is over and the Judgment Day runs Raw, while Orton countered by saying he's heard about mommy this and mommy that, but now Daddy's home. That started a Daddy's home chant, and when Jade attempted to ambush the Viper from behind, the Irish Ace ate an RKO. Dominik Mysterio also made an appearance, setting up Orton vs. Mysterio in the main event in Randy's first singles match in a year and a half. Fans may not have noticed, but Randy broke a big Vince McMahon rule in his promo as he used the word wrestling, while McMahon had previously mandated that it be called sports entertainment. Orton was having none of that and used the W word when stating how glad he is to be back, and with McMahon no longer influencing shows and Triple H in charge, it's unlikely Randy will face any punishment. In the main event, Mysterio used a cheap shot on Orton, but it didn't deter the Viper, who swiftly seized control thanks to his signature power slams and draping DDT. When Orton seemed to have the victory in his grasp, Jade intervened, pulling Mysterio out of harm's way, and Dominik would later turn the tide, hitting Randy with a 619. Orton avoided a frog splash attempt though and hit an RKO to get the win, earning a victory in his first match on Raw in 567 days. His previous match on Raw saw RK Bro face the Street Profits, and it'll be interesting to see what WWE does next with the former world champion. So while Orton sets his sights on the bloodline, it appears that he'll be feuding with the Judgment Day for now, and why is that the case? Well, for one thing, the Judgment Day need a credible threat on Raw, something Orton certainly is, and the Viper is one of the few top faces who's yet to work with the dominant faction. As for the bloodline, it is the faction that put Orton on the shelf in May of last year, and while a feud can be expected, it doesn't have to take place anytime soon. With so much happening right now, Triple H may be keeping Orton and the bloodline apart until the time feels right, and the Judgment Day will keep the Viper occupied until then. In his first Raw appearance in close to a decade, CM Punk was the most highly anticipated segment on a great episode of Monday Night Raw, and it was filled with subtle references and shots. Punk stated that he's home, a declaration that WWE fans may find hard to believe, especially given Punk's unsavory comments during his WWE absence and throughout his AEW run. Punk said that he's been embraced by many backstage except for a couple of people who are afraid of him setting the bar too high, and even referenced his wife AJ Lee. WWE's newest signing said that AJ sends her regards, while also stating that a certain wise man advised him that he needed to leave WWE to come back stronger than ever. That wise man, of course, is Paul Heyman, who Punk would work with for years, and it's interesting that Punk is being open about his closeness to the special counsel of Roman Reigns. Punk's line about some being afraid of him, the most dangerous and controversial man, seemed to be a shot at those in AEW, as well as our reigning World Heavyweight Champion, Seth Rollins. As we saw in the viral Survivor Series footage, Rollins has not been supportive of Punk nor thrilled by his return, and in fact, he even called him a hypocrite on Raw and refused to spend time talking about him. As Raw was going off the air, CM Punk sent a clear 11-word message stating, "I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to make money." If Punk can stay out of trouble backstage, there will be plenty of money to be made, as well as the chance for Punk to remind fans that he is more than just a behind-the-scenes menace. Tonight's promo had a lot of callbacks to his promos from the past, and it remains to be seen where Punk will head next from here. After the show went off the air, Punk spent plenty of time hanging with the WWE Universe and took photos and signed a bunch of autographs, which, going by his 2011 pipe bomb, hopefully won't end up on eBay. Despite the controversy of his AEW exit, Punk is as over with the WWE Universe as he was a decade ago, and gave fans in Nashville an extra special memory after the cameras stopped rolling. It was at Survivor Series 3,590 days after his previous appearance for WWE that Punk made his shocking return in the closing moments of the show. Punk's return came just 91 days after his final match at AEW All In, where he would have a backstage fight with Jack Perry, and what do those in AEW make of all this? Fightful Select reports that last Saturday, those in AEW were more concerned with that night's collision, and the reaction has been far more subdued than expected. The report states, "As for his AEW, Tony Khan seemed more concerned Saturday night about losing Katsuyori Shibata than CM Punk heading to WWE. The majority of reactions we've gained within AEW are people asking about how the reaction with WWE has been. The answer to that is much more tepid than originally expected, just as was the case when Punk came back to AEW for Collision. In both WWE and AEW, there had been people that had said they didn't want to work with him and would consider leaving, but we heard of no release requests from people in AEW, and now WWE connected to it. The report added that some top WWE talent had asked individuals in AEW as to whether Punk was involved in the Devil storyline, but that clearly isn't the case anymore. Punk was said to never be involved in the storyline, despite what some had speculated, but the fact that WWE talent suspected it shows his return was indeed a closely guarded secret backstage. When Punk returned, WWE used visuals from Punk's previous stint with the company, including a Titantron video, leading to questions as to who in WWE's production knew and for how long. When Fightful reached out to a source from Peacock who compiled Punk-related content, they said it took minimal time to assemble, as the content was already available on their platform. A WWE source said that there were guidelines provided on how to handle Punk chants at SmackDown in Chicago and Survivor Series prior to his return at the end of the latter's show. The general direction was to minimize acknowledgement of these chants as much as possible, and while WWE now have Punk, they weren't the only ones interested in him. The report adds, "We can confirm that there was a real offer put together for CM Punk by Impact/TNA, as Ibu of Wrestle Purists mentioned recently. Fightful spoke to several associated with the company this weekend that said he was well liked during his visits there, and we're told the door remains open. There had been some friends of Punk's that thought he was a real possibility before talks with Triple H started. Those close to him fully believed that he would wrestle again, and when it looked like the door wasn't open for a return, it seemed like an option if Punk wanted it." These are still early days of CM Punk's second run with WWE, and there are plenty of questions left to be answered. But what do you make of his shocking return so far? Sound off in the comments. CM Punk's new deal with WWE came together after 2 lengthy hatchet-burying talks with Triple H, which could prove to be especially bad for those working in AEW. On the Jim Cornette Experience, the infamous wrestling personality spoke about coming to WWE and how this makes those at AEW look by comparison. He said, "At this point, they smell this blood in the water, and they're chomping on it because now Triple H has told everybody in AEW, yeah, the guy that your EVPs said was a cancer and they couldn't get along with under any circumstances, they didn't want to speak to, they didn't want to meet with, they didn't want to work with, they didn't want to make up with, and their friends and minions hounded him and badgered him until he finally face-locked one of them. Well, now he's going to main event WrestleMania." If WWE can keep Punk under control, then it could make AEW look very bad, as the man that the Elite refused to even speak to could become one of WWE's highest drawing talents. Between Punk, Jade Cargill, and Cody Rhodes, WWE has signed some of AEW's very top stars. And what do you make of Cornette's comments? Sound off in our comments section below. While he didn't become World Heavyweight Champion recently, Shinsuke Nakamura has been on quite the run, and in recent weeks has been calling out an unknown opponent in mysterious promos. Several names were speculated to be the one Nakamura was calling out, but on this week's Raw, it was revealed that he has been speaking to Cody Rhodes. After Rhodes declared himself for the men's 2024 Royal Rumble match, Nakamura attacked him from behind using a red mist, while Michael Cole confirmed that Rhodes had been the subject of Nakamura's promos. A Nakamura-Rhodes feud will help establish Nakamura as a bigger heel and keep the King of Strong Style in a prominent spot, while also giving Cody a feud ahead of the Royal Rumble. A victory over Nakamura will give Rhodes plenty of momentum going into the Rumble, and this feud could help catapult the American Nightmare back into the world title picture. In September, WWE parted ways with talent from both the main roster and NXT, with names like Matt Riddle, Shelton Benjamin, and Dolph Ziggler being cut from the company. These cuts to the roster came shortly after 100 employees were let go from WWE's corporate side, but now we've learned of more names to be cut, as Fightful Select reports. Fightful asked WWE in an official capacity about the NXT status of Alexis Leet, Olivia Ash, Guy Eberno, and others that fans online have surmised were released. WWE didn't officially confirm the releases happened in September, but sources confirmed to Fightful that was the case. WWE didn't announce their releases this year, as they've done in the past, with news breaking from platforms like Fightful or from talent who were cut sharing the news themselves. As NXT talent, these ex-superstars have to wait 30 days before they compete elsewhere, and it remains to be seen what's next for them now their WWE careers are over. Raw also saw the introduction of a brand new theme song, which is called Born to Be, which has been created by Def Rebel, who have done several current WWE themes in the past. This new intro for Raw might take some time to feel right, as it has a lot less energy than the previous theme for the Red brand, but on Twitter, some liked the new theme. Well, others didn't. But what did you make of Raw's new theme, which has come at a time of massive changes on TV with the returns of CM Punk and Randy Orton? Let us know in the comments. This week's Raw was certainly one worth tuning in for, but one of the most notable names of the show remained backstage at the event. PW Insider reports that former TNA owner Dixie Carter visited last night's Monday Night Raw, and she was backstage for the show because they are in her home city. WWE Monday Night Raw aired from the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, Tennessee, so Dixie Carter didn't have to travel far to be at the show. On social media, photos emerged of Carter catching up with several TNA alum, including Drake Maverick, Nick Aldis, and Cody Rhodes, and she seemed to have a great time at Raw. Logan Paul news now as the Maverick captured the US Championship at Crown Jewel, and now Paul is set to make his return to WWE programming. Paul will be a part of Friday's SmackDown, where he will be looking for his first challenger, and who do you want to see step up to the reigning United States Champion? Back to Raw, as Seth Rollins told the Nashville crowd that though he wasn't feeling 100% after War Games, he was itching to put the World Heavyweight Championship on the line again. This brought out Drew McIntyre, who threw his hat into the mix, but Rollins said that on next week's Raw, he'll be defending his gold against main event Jey Uso instead. Rollins reminded McIntyre that he had a title opportunity not too long ago, that being at Crown Jewel earlier this month, and on that night, Seth defended his gold against the Scotsman. Seth added that there are now others, including Uso, ahead of him in line, and McIntyre responded with a violent headbutt that actually bloodied his own forehead. Uso hit the ring to defend Rollins, delivering a super kick of his own before in tandem with Rollins, prompting McIntyre to retreat, realizing he was outmatched. Later on, a backstage segment led to McIntyre getting a different match next week, this one being against Sami Zayn, which was hardly the match Drew wanted at the start of the show. Rollins' title defense against Jey will be the 9th of his title reign, which began back in May when he defeated AJ Styles in a tournament finals at Night of Champions to win the gold. Jey's last World Championship opportunity came in August at SummerSlam when he unsuccessfully challenged Roman Reigns, and Jey and Seth proved to be quite the allies last Saturday in War Games. While the pair have worked together, both will do whatever it takes to leave next week's Raw as World Heavyweight Champion in what should be an excellent main event. More from Raw, and you never know who's going to show up on the Red brand, and this week, the rapper-singer Jelly Roll made a surprise cameo on the show. In a backstage segment, Jelly Roll showed up, and several superstars were excited to have him there, including R-Truth, who mistook Jelly Roll for an actual food. Jelly Roll is no stranger to pro wrestlers, as he was recently spotted hanging out with AEW star Parker Boudreaux during a stop on Jelly Roll's Backroads Baptism tour. We'll have to see who else shows up to Raw, as WWE has been able to secure some notable celebrities in the past, and Jelly Roll certainly seemed to have a good time last night in Nashville. Now it seems everyone has shared their take on CM Punk's return to WWE, but one person who has noticeably been quiet about what happened in the Allstate Arena last Saturday is Tony Khan. Khan and Punk were once tight as it gets, but their relationship was soured after All Out 2022 and All In 2023, and the AEW president will not be speaking about WWE's newest signing. Speaking to the BBC's Steve Herman as All In 2024 pre-sale tickets went on sale, Khan was asked about Punk and made it clear that he won't be talking about him. He said, "Can't talk about that, nor do I think it's the time and the place. I appreciate you asking. I'm very excited about AEW All In at Wembley Stadium. Not to dodge your questions, but it's not something I can legally talk about." It's ironic that Khan can't talk about Punk, as following both All Out 2022 and All In 2023, he would often shut down questions about Punk by saying he couldn't speak about the wrestler. Now Khan can't talk about Punk, but WWE certainly can, and we'll have to see what CM Punk has to say in the coming weeks. With CM Punk returning to WWE, the wrestling world has been talking about everybody's favorite twice-suspended ex-AEW talent, which has been reflected in the search engines. Punk's return at Survivor Series immediately went viral, with the clip of his return on WWE's YouTube channel being watched millions of times, but that's not the only place he's been going viral. Google Trends reveals that Punk's return generated significant attention from mainstream media outlets like ESPN, USA Today, Fox News, and others, as everybody was talking about him. In fact, Punk was the second most searched term in the United States on Sunday, registering 500,000 searches, and to put that in perspective, boxer David Benavidez ranked at number 4 with 200,000 searches. Notably, these were the only topic related to combat sports that made it into the top 20 search queries of that day, and it's getting increasingly harder to get into the top 20. Even UFC shows, which used to be a surefire way to enter the top 20, no longer consistently achieve that level of search interest, so this goes to show just how interested people are in CM Punk. A report from Ringside News pointed out that on Peacock, there is a whole section dedicated to CM Punk following his surprise return, which would have seemed impossible this time last week. Whether you love CM Punk or hate him, he has gotten the wrestling world talking once again, a fact that WWE will surely pay attention to now that he's back and under contract again. Over the past year or so, AEW has lost a few key figures, including William Regal, Jade Cargill, Brian Pillman Jr., and of course Cody Rhodes, and now another name is on their way out. On Twitter, QT Marshall announced that a lot has changed at AEW since 2019, and with the company heading in a different direction, it's time that he does the same. Marshall has resigned from AEW and will have fulfilled all obligations with the promotion by the end of this year, but he did not go into any specifics that led to this decision. Instead, Marshall thanked Tony Khan, AEW, and everyone who works in the promotion, and it'll be interesting to see what's next for him once he's done with AEW. At AEW World's End, MJF will compete against Samoa Joe in his home state of New York, but that match will not be an easy one for the reigning AEW World Champion. On social media, MJF revealed that he has a torn labrum in his left shoulder, but plans on defending the title against Joe regardless, adding that, "I believe in AEW." While MJF would quickly delete this post, Dave Meltzer took to Twitter to confirm what MJF has said, and said that while he will work with Joe at the next pay-per-view, this is a huge blow. MJF plans to compete at the show, but there's serious questions as to whether he'll need time off after World's End. And if so, then we could be weeks away from seeing a new AEW World Champion. At this time, Jade Cargill and WWE are working together to prepare for her in-ring debut for the promotion, but there's still no word on when that'll be. PW Insider reports that Cargill has been a consistent presence at the Performance Center and is said to be there on a weekly basis, which falls in line with previous reports about the ex-AEW star. During the Survivor Series press conference, Triple H said that big things are in store for Jade, but nothing can be rushed, and until her time comes, Cargill will be working hard at the PC. Gunther was immensely confident on this week's Raw after retaining the Intercontinental Championship at Survivor Series and had some choice words for The Miz backstage. In a face-to-face confrontation, Gunther said that Miz can claim he belongs in the ring, but just not with him, and we'll have to see if a rematch happens between these two. After earning a title shot last week, Tegan Nox and Natalya challenged WWE Women's Tag Team Champions Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, but a title change was not in the cards on this night. Niven picked up the win for her team with a crossbody to Nox and hoisted up both belts as Green celebrated at ringside in a fine, if not filler, match on the show. Raw also saw Nia Jax and Zoey Stark go one-on-one on this week's Raw, and during the match, Jax snapped at a WWE official before getting a dominant win. The match was made after Stark challenged Jax backstage, and while Zoey wasted no time when the bell rung, she was sent to the corner by the Irresistible Force. An enziguri was hit, but an attempted springboard was cut off, and in a strange moment, Nia rolled out to the floor and snapped at Michael Cole, who was doing commentary. Jax was taken out at ringside by Stark, who came off the ropes, and when Raw returned from commercials, Jax had Stark locked in the torture rack, but Stark was able to escape. Stark managed to briefly stun her opponent before being tackled to the mat, and later in the match, when Nia went for the Annihilator, it was Stark who took her down. A top rope dropkick earned Stark a 2 count, but Jax was able to later catch Stark and slam her on the mat with a Samoan drop. Jax would then hit her Annihilator to get the pinfall win. This wasn't a particularly exciting match, but it did show how much Jax improved during her time away from WWE, while also making Stark look like a competent powerhouse babyface. The second half of the match was much better than the first. You could hear the crowd reacting more with each move, and while Jax scored the pin, Stark had a good showing. In an encounter of big meaty men slapping meat, Ivar faced Bronson Reed, but these two were more focused on beating the hell out of each other than winning the match. As the two brawled at ringside, both were counted out, and while this finish will upset some, expect another physical match down the line. After Adam Pearce had a mini meltdown last week, he booked a tag team turmoil match for this week's Raw, in which the winners would earn a shot at the tag team titles. DIY started strong by eliminating Alpha Academy and Indus Sher before being taken out by the Creed brothers, who also eliminated the New Day and Imperium to win the whole thing. Having the first hour of Raw be commercial-free was a great move, as it allowed time to finally give the tag team division some attention, which it's been sorely needing. The Creeds getting so much time allowed them to show off to fans who didn't see them in NXT, and now the pair are on course for a showdown with the Judgment Day. And that was this week's Raw, coming off the heels of a historic Survivor Series. But what did you think of it? Sound off in the comments. In NXT, Sanity were once one of the Gold brand's most dominant factions, but after an underwhelming call-up to the main roster, all but Nikki Cross were released from the company. This past weekend, Sanity's Eric Young, Killian Dane, and Alexander Wolf reunited at a Progress Wrestling show, and with new Sanity shirts, this may not be the last time we see them together. And we're ending with Matt Riddle, who has hardly struggled to find work since his WWE release, as he's been booked for multiple events, and he's now set to be a part of a Lucha Libre show. The original Bro will be part of The Crash on January 19th of next year, and we'll have to see who Riddle faces at what'll be one of his first events post-WWE.